Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Steven Wright. He's the owner of Healthy Gut. And boy, are we going to be geeking out today because the two of us both have some issues with anxiety. And he has a new product that he let me test out, and it's a combination of capsules and cream that help in the moment when you just can't stop those looping thoughts. So if that sounds familiar, this podcast is for you. So let's get into the podcast. Hey, health junkies. I've got Steven Wright on again. And as always, we are bound to have a great conversation. And today I'm really excited because Steven gifted me some Be Serene products, his like new brainchild acquisition. I guess we could probably call it that. And I'm as an anxiety sufferer and, just all things hyper nervous person, these products have been really great. So we're going to talk about them today. So Steven, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Thanks, Jannine. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to talk about this new area.
Man, we always learn good stuff from you. So it's always a pleasure to have you on. But in this case, I'm like really, as if Healthy Gut wasn't like the best thing, for digestive systems. Now I'm like, all right, you bought the company that was sourcing the products and everything, these Be Serene products. And now like I'm going, all right, this stuff actually works. So before we got on, I was kind of saying this phenomenon, and I think a lot of people have probably the same phenomenon, is like you take a supplement and you're like, I think I feel better. I'm not really sure. Do I? I don't know. But with Be Serene, I was like, I'm not flipping out on things that I normally do. So I'm guessing that you found the same thing when you tried the product before you bought the company.
Yeah, that's essentially how this happened. Was I was friends with the original formulator and one of the original founders, Dr. Morgan Camp, who's an MD who had really bad social anxiety and things like that. And we've been friends for over 10 years, and he launched the company, and I was just, in his network. He sent me some product to test, as, some people do. And I noticed something, but I didn't notice a ton. But my mom has, generalized anxiety disorder. She's never been, she's never actually gone to a psychiatrist to get that diagnosis, but I can safely tell you that she meets all the criteria. And I give it to her, and I was like, hey, just, try taking this, because she's a middle school librarian. And when the pandemic kicked off, her anxiety just went, crazy. And so they're trying to force her back to school and dealing with the kids, and everybody's nervous system just kind of got really jacked up over the last 3 years. So I gave it to her, and she started taking like 4 a day and became like a different person, like totally capable of coping with life. And that was like the huge insight for me at the time, that like, okay, the oral delivery of these herbs and the mixture of these herbs is different than any other adaptogenic blend that I've tested on myself as well as other people. And there's something here. And then when they came out with the instant relief cream, which is my fave, that totally revolutionized my like anxious thinking and sleep issues.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is a different combo because, we're used to like the typical ashwagandha, schisandra berry, maybe some oat straw, maybe some lemon balm. None of that's in here. And in fact, shatavari or the asparagus racemosa was one of the main ingredients. And I was like, interesting. I never thought of that as a calming agent ever. Did you think that when you first saw that? You're like, interesting.
No, I didn't. And this is not like my, herbalism is not my forte per se. And the actual like formulator with Dr. Camp is a master herbalist who refuses to wear shoes and practices out in California. He won't even wear shoes in his own office. And he literally can like taste the herbs and the various extracts and tell you, this has a little bit too high of some alkaloid in the holy basil or something, so we should reduce it down. So he was really the guy who has developed the ratio of the herbs to each other and really put together the formula. And then when I started to actually read the research on them, because that's more where I come from, it is from, what's published and what can we make of this from a scientific standpoint. I was like, wow, I've never heard of these herbs, and they're really cool. They can do some cool properties that I don't see a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and Mulungu, I mean, I've actually never had that ever, ever. Had you ever had it before trying this?
No, no. We believe that Mulungu is this sort of iteration, and their company had been around for 2 years, and they decided they wanted to move on to other things, which is why we ended up acquiring the product line and then kind of reformulating it a little bit to meet healthy gut standards. But Mulungu was the reason for this. So the story is basically, Dr. Camp goes down to the Brazil, he goes down to the rainforest. He's thinking he's going to do some ayahuasca or some psychedelics. He wants to get healing for this anxiety. And the shamans are like, no, not, you don't even get that. You're going to drink this Mulungu tea. And so they gave him, this course of Mulungu tea, and it totally helped him and totally changed his relationship to being out in the world in the public. And so he really wanted to westernize Mulungu because it really has, as far as we're aware, never been brought out of Brazil and Peru into the Western world. And so there are a few studies comparing Mulungu to some prescription anti-anxiety products during third molar extraction. So basically,
Whoa.
before you get your wisdom teeth pulled, they give one group of people Mulungu, and they give the other group of people like a prescription anti-anxiety pill, and then they monitored what happened. And the Mulungu performed as well as the prescription for the majority of people, and it had less side effects, even though it didn't necessarily like kick the prescription product's butt or anything like that.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, I get it, right? If anyone who's listening to this has ever taken a Xanax or, or a Valium, I mean, it calms you down. There's no doubt about it. But then there's kind of that like after effect where you feel kind of hungover in a trance or something. Whereas this, I could function and I could focus, and there wasn't that like spaced cadet component to it, is what I found.
Yeah, you're 100% true. I mean, that's my experience as well. Like, I mean, if you need to get, if you're way outside your zone of tolerance, like life has been too much for you, whatever's happening, and like something bad could happen if you don't get back in that zone of tolerance, nothing beats, like you said, a Xanax or something like that. But we have a lot of data showing that long-term usage of that, even habitual usage on a monthly basis for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, you're going to be building some pathways the wrong way that are going to bite you in the butt later. Like there's going to be side effects, literally. I mean, that's relation to how powerful it is. Whereas the goal with the Be Serene daily formula, and the goal with using Mulungu and some of these adaptogenic herbs that have not been quite, I think, talked about enough, is they are just that. They are adaptogenic. They are more natural, so they have less of the side effect profile. And of course, yes, they're not quite as strong in the moment as a prescription. Otherwise, they'd be a prescription themselves. But the goal, in my opinion, I'll be very curious to hear what you think of this, is to basically build up tolerance or tonify the parasympathetic nervous system over months of usage. So your goal is to use them to build your sort of muscles in your parasympathetic nervous system to deal with, life, whatever is stressing you out.
Absolutely. That's kind of how I see it as well. And I actually took it to another level with taking this. I had started tapping a couple months ago, like the whole EFT thing. And I was like, hey, I wonder if these things with the tapping, how that's going to go. And I found it to be like, okay, I can calm myself down. I can tap, I can say what I need to say, get it out of the system. And then like, it seems that I'm building kind of like that foundation of calm or parasympathetic, guys that are listening, that's your calming nervous system aspect of the nervous system. And yeah, I think it is a tonifying effect. And then of course, I had to take it to another level and try to add something in since I like to do those things.
For sure. Well, I mean, you're essentially building better coping habits, which I think is hopefully the message that we get out there today is like, look, we're all coping. Like when I reach
Mm-hmm.
for a glass of wine or whiskey, when I reach for some dark chocolate due to a long day or a stressful day or something's gone wrong, that's coping. Just like,
Mm-hmm.
exercising or tapping or meditation or using adaptogenic herbs is coping. And so the question is not, are you coping? The question is, what is your toolkit when you're coping? And
Mm-hmm.
is it really like making you stronger over time, or is it depleting you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is that's so well said. Cause yeah, I definitely this whole theme this week on my Instagram is your toolkit, like building your toolkit so that you have more resilience to this kind of stuff. And I agree. Having this as a instead of like a crutch, it's a okay, what's my go-to and what can I do to build over time? I love that. I love that. And this kind of leads in to looking at okay, say pills aren't for everyone. And like you had mentioned before, the pills were like, I'm not really noticing anything. But when you tried the cream version of this, then that topical, you were like, yes, this can help me build. So let's switch and talk about that because I think for a lot of people, they'll be like, yeah, I don't want to take pills. So guess this doesn't work for me. But the fact that you have another option is even better for this. So tell us about the difference between what's in the pills versus the cream.
Yeah, so the only they're built to be used together, and the daily or the oral is supposed to be used on a daily basis to build up your strength, build up your reserve to life and what's happening now. Like if it's been a really hard day, like yesterday was kind of a hard day for me, I took two extra ones before bed because I was like, please, let's go to bed tonight, and I don't want to think about this anymore. But in general, the cream is for those times where you're way out of your zone of tolerance. Like you can't get your looping thoughts to shut down, which is a common thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're like just crazy angry, or maybe having a hard time catching your breath, almost on the verge of a panic attack or something like that. Like your anxiety is just reaching a really, really high level. So when you're in those states where you're just way outside of your comfort zone, of your zone of tolerance, that's where the cream was built to be a much faster acting solution. And the only overlap between the two is the Mulungu herb, which is kind of like I said, the really, I mean, the other ones are cool and they all have some really cool things that they do, but the Mulungu is the one that's really hyper focused on that sort of anxiety pathways. And I think the reason why the cream ends up being so powerful is it ends up you end up getting a pretty solid dose of GABA, which
Mm-hmm.
GABA is typically what we're all lacking when we can't calm down. It's a lot of the breaks and the slowdown and the just making everything easier in life. And my hypothesis at this point is that those of us who have digestive issues, those of us who have like chronic health conditions, orally getting GABA into our body is like almost impossible. At least that's been my experience, both clinically as well as
Mm-hmm.
personally, is that there's really cool formulations out there, and they can tell me all the marketing and they can tell me all the studies, but like when I take them, I don't feel that calming effect. And then I think that it's getting destroyed either by the gut and used by the gut cells, or the bugs in there are eating it up. But when you do it topically, you're actually getting it right through into the central nervous system, and you're actually getting some of that GABA in there to relax.
Yeah. Yeah, I found the same thing with GABA internally, or like orally, no. But yeah, I agree with you that it's definitely the delivery process that you've got going on here with the Be Serene cream. It's working because yes, we do deplete that GABA when we head into that looping and can't get out of that looping component. Now, let's talk a little bit about the cream because I had said to you before we got on the recording, I saw there's some acrylates in it. Some folks, I'm sure, as we had talked about, kind of hit you up to ask, about the different things in it. let's talk about how do we get the GABA in, because GABA historically is a hard one to get into the system, whether it's gut or even cream. We have to have a good delivery mechanism.
Yeah, yeah. So again, just so we're clear here, like I have anxiety and I have sleep related issues regarding I can do everything right. I can black out the curtains. I have the best earplug. I like they're not even the most expensive earplugs. I've just tried like so many brands and found the ones for me. I can do everything right. And then when I close my eyes, like my brain is just popping off, this formulation, that formulation, this inventory problem, nuclear war, I don't know, like it's just, and I don't even know where it's coming from. Like, I'm so tired right now, please just go to bed. And my mind just won't let go. And so this cream was the way to get me through some of the most stressful days during the pandemic. It's a lot less of an issue now, but it's still an issue sometimes. And it's my thing when my meditation practice doesn't work, when my breath work can't get my mind under control, this is my way into controlling my brain and letting go and falling away to sleep and relaxing. And so when I acquired the product line, I was like, okay, well, we got to make this healthy gut standards. We're going to have to make this stronger. We're going to have to make this better. We definitely need to strip out some of these ingredients on the label and make it, better. We can't have California poppy in there. That's just no good. And then I realized that California poppy and the opiate poppy aren't even the same class of herb. Like they're not even the same flower. They're not in the same lineage. And I was like, oh, those are totally different. And California poppy has awesome research actually on anti-anxiety as well as pain relief. And I was like, okay, cool. California poppy can stay. That's pretty cool. And then it came down to these, like you said, these additives in the cream base. And I'm new to topical formulations, and so I know I'm going to get better, and that this product's going to get better in the coming years. But after running everything through the environmental working group website, nothing scored above a 2 on the sort of like scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like really do not, don't eat that, don't touch it, stay the heck away from it. And 1 being like, we don't really have any data that this is an issue at all. Everything was like a 1-2. And so I felt very comfortable going to market with it and putting it on my own body, recommending it to my family and to the community. And, the issue that I found in trying other topical formulas is this, and this is true, I think, for my wife, Shay, as well, is like, we always want to go as non-toxic as possible, but it seems like a lot of times the most non-toxic stuff never does the job. Like the non-toxic makeup doesn't work or it makes you break out. The non-toxic delivery mechanism for things like this, it can be like really greasy and never really go through the skin. And so to me, this is the best trade-off of actually making a product that can get through the skin. It doesn't leave you with like this really greasy residue that you're kind of sniffing and smelling and touching the rest of the day. And so, I mean, that's kind of where we're at, but I welcome all your questions and let's keep talking about it.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I mean, when I owned a spa back in the day in Tacoma, I was part owner, and we got to try a lot of different, like, quote, all natural products. And I say quote because depended on what we were looking at. And yeah, I would have something that was so sticky, and like later on in the day, I'd have all these fuzzies stuck to my arm. I'm like, yeah, I can't live like that. It's not gonna happen. But the other side of it is, a lot of folks don't understand that certain molecules have certain Daltons, so meaning like their size. And for absorbability across the skin lining, we actually need certain things. And one of the big things that I had when I had looked at the ingredients, I was like, oh, acrylates are used commonly in different things in the skin industry. And I was like, oh man, I don't, from what I'd heard, that wasn't the greatest thing to have. But at the same time, I'm also one of those people that's like, well, some of these things we're getting a little too nitpicky on and sacrificing a little bit of, I would say, like you said, efficacy for being really, really nitpicky, because a lot of people will look at, anything that shows up on the list of toxicity and be like, well, nope, not using that product, but then wonder why their all natural product isn't getting them results. So really the biggest one that I kind of looked at was the acrylates. And I'd love to hear, I'd really love you to like give folks a little bit of spin off on that, and why there's the certain ingredients that there are in the product.
Yeah, so the polyacrylate is one of the ones that can score the 2 potentially on the EWG group. So you're totally right, and I'm sure there's going to be people that will won't even touch this product maybe because it's in there, and it sucks, I think, in many ways.
Yeah.
But polyacrylate is needed because it's a really amazing, like you said, base that basically kind of suspends the various herbs and the various like GABA and L-theanine in the product. It thickens and suspends it, and then it's very good at crossing the skin barrier. And so it's hard to replicate. Again, I'm open to options. If people have other options, they want to email me, support Healthy Gut with other options. I'm happy to do some testing. But my point of view at Healthy Gut and my point of view on life is always, it's got to get amazing results, and then we want to lower risk afterwards. But if it doesn't get results, then no one's ever going to use it again, and we're just another company saying that, hey, these herbs are cool. But I have the same experience with like rhodiola and ashwagandha, where I take like 500, 1,000 milligrams, and I'm like, do something. Doesn't do anything. And so at this point in time, we believe the polyacrylate is needed to pass it through the skin lining, to be a base to suspend these herbs in, and open to that changing as well. And like there's another one in there, polysorbate 20. Yes. That's the other one that people take a lot of issue with, and that one's really good at making sure nothing nasty lives in your cream. It's like really good at no yeast, no mold, no bacteria, no nothing like that. And so again, a lot of research has been done actually on polysorbate 20, and it doesn't seem that damaging, but I understand that people have some issues with it. So we'll be looking into that in the future, seeing if we can get rid of it. The new formulation that will be coming out here soon is all alcohol extracts, which allowed us to use less of the preservatives. The issue with these awesome herbs is if we lock them in a capsule and then we lock them in a bottle with like oxygen remover and all these things, like they're pretty much away from, they don't have moisture on them. They're dried. They're in a pill. Like they're not going to grow anything, right? There's no like possibility of growth really inside of a pill capsule. But as soon as you put them in a cream with moisture and liquid, you're literally just setting up the conditions to grow life of all types. And so you have to layer in these various antifungals, antibacterials, anti-mold products to keep things good and not end up hurting anybody.
I think that's a great description for folks to kind of understand why these things are there, because I don't want to put anything with a bunch of fungal or bacterial agents back on my skin when my skin already has. I mean, and hopefully my skin's strong enough to be able to handle things. But at the same time, I mean, we want a clean product. And I think when we think about clean, we also have to think about not just clean chemically, but we also want to think about clean in microbially, because let's face it, humans have a lot of different issues with bugs as it is. And definitely I want to kind of segue into the gut axis here in a little bit. But before we get there, I think it's a valid point to really talk about pros and cons when it comes to the different stabilizers and the different I guess you could say stability or antimicrobial agents in products. And I think we should probably talk about the difference between having like an actual like triclosan or something versus what's in here. It's not the same in terms of an antibacterial of that state. It's more of a static. Would you say that, Steven? It's more of like a static. It keeps things static so they can't reproduce anything versus triclosan where we're actually killing things.
Yeah, not necessarily the same use case. And in fact, if you try to use something like, I don't know, super high concentrations of polysorbate 20 or something, maybe that's where you'd run into issues because that's not what it's used for.
Right.
Like you said, it's basically to preserve the current environment, and
Hmm.
it basically restricts all different types of, like, say, oxygen and water and things like this, such that the growth of nasty, creepy crawly type things is much harder. Not that it's actually like an active killing um substance that we would apply should you have like something you'd want to kill in your skin.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just wanted to clarify that so that folks didn't think it was that kind of route there. So let's talk about the cream as a whole because it I felt like in minutes I was calmer. How like did you feel the same when you first tried it? It like took over like fast.
Yeah, it was also minutes for me too. On the website we say, like, plan for 7 to 10 minutes. Most people feel it faster than that. You can feel it the fastest if you put it, like you said, behind your ears or on your temples. I normally put it on my wrists and then just dab a little bit on my temples. But yeah, I mean, you're avoiding the gut and you're avoiding all those all the stuff we talked about in other podcasts, like stomach acid and enzymes and all these things that want to kill and break down substances that come through our body. We avoid that by kind of going through the skin, and so it's a pretty remarkable product. We actually had a teenage autistic kid write in. His mom had given it to him, and I think he's 18 and just finishing up high school, and he was trying to play a trumpet solo for his school. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he was having a bunch of anxiety, and his mom had slipped it into his little case or whatever that that have the trumpet in. He put it on, and he was just so grateful that he was able to, like, calm down, play his set. I don't know anything about music, so I apologize. People are probably upset with how I'm describing this, but he was able to play his tune, whatever he was supposed to play, and I just thought that was really cool because that's how we want the product to be used. It's like, have one in your purse, have one by your bedside table, have one in the car or whatever, and just have it for whenever, like, life gets really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great example to be able to perform in a situation when you need to perform. And so, it helps folks to understand that it's not just for bedtime and helping them to sleep. It's like if things are hitting the fan in your mind, and this is something that happens commonly, my audience is perimenopausal, menopausal women. So if our estrogens are out of whack, whether they're too high or too low, we could kind of loop on some stuff. You're married, you know how this stuff goes. Um, us ladies get a little batty sometimes, and we won't tell Shay if you say anything. But no, you just get a little batty sometimes, and it can really help when like something set you off and your little switch that just has you seeing red. It just happens to really help. And you said in your purse, like, or your car, I would definitely say that this could be something, everybody's got to know what their triggers are, but it's definitely for me something that's helped me like in minutes be like, okay, life is okay again. We can calm down. I can breathe.
Yeah, and that's really that's the hope of it. Again, is you know the oral formula. Speaking of women and menopausal, the Shivardi has, I don't know if you knew this, but it has a bunch of um it seems like it upregulates estrogen E2 receptors.
Mm-hmm.
um and there's some really cool stuff on, like, strength and muscle function and like sex desire and things like that from taking the Shivardi. The Shivardi is not in the topical, but we have a like a hormone clinic, if you will, like, basically like a hormone replacement clinic that uses, and they basically tell the women, take the oral every day to sort of like stay okay and stay asleep, and then take the topical when you need to get to sleep and be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how they prescribe it, along with their hormone replacement protocols that they use.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see it even too, like, waking up in the middle of the night and then your mind's looping and like, oh my God, I just need to sleep. That whole thing that happens there as well.
Yeah, that's my other top use for it. And I just need to be clear, like this stuff doesn't treat any sleep disorders, doesn't treat insomnia or anything like that. But that racing thoughts, that mind looping, that inability to slow down, it can help support that and shutting those pathways off, so you can just relax and then hopefully drift off to sleep.
Absolutely. I mean, I've tried it myself for that too, and it's definitely helped me. So I think this is definitely, I like that you added these to the repertoire of healthy gut. And I think it's a good combo. So now, of course, me being me and being the naturopath that I am, I got to tie it back to the gut, because if we're anxious, usually we've got a little bit of gut microbiome stuff that could be contributing as well. And so how would you pair, if someone was to come in and say like, and obviously I know you're not diagnosing or treating or anything here, but if someone was to say like, hey, Steven, how could I pair these with your products to get like the most out of, say, a anxiety kind of situation, what would you recommend for them to kind of have a base of the Be Serene products, but then what else would you say is a base for the gut?
Yeah, I mean they're built and they're ready to be right along with any gut protocol, whether it's healthy guts protocols and healthy guts products or not. I think where people fail in trying to overcome their gut issues is thinking that it's just a gut issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like the hormones, your hormones and your, which includes not only your sex hormones, but your adrenal hormones and your thyroid hormones are like intimately linked to your gut and your capacity to be healthy there and have longevity. And so the same is true with like detoxification pathways like glutathione and your liver and kidney function. You can use even all of Healthy Guts products. And if you have like pretty trashed adrenals and thyroid and sex hormones and your detox pathways, your liver's sluggish, you're backed up, you have no glutathione, like you're never going to really get out of the sort of downward spiral you find yourself in, even if you get stabilized on Healthy Gut products. And the reason why is because it all works in concert together. And so I would hope that whoever you're working with has you on some sort of adrenal or thyroid or some sort of hormone support while you're doing your gut work. And then hopefully they've tested and checked through symptoms or actual tests regarding your detox pathways to make sure those are opened up, because otherwise, again, you're sort of I can't remember who it might have been, Paul Chek or something, that said this analogy first, but it's like you take all your trash to the door, but you never take the trash out to the road. And so you just back up all this trash at your door if you don't have your detox pathways working. And so I don't know how they're not connected, in my opinion.
Right. Right. No, I would absolutely agree. And if someone's trying to kind of figure it out on their own, and maybe they don't have a practitioner near them, maybe they're just kind of overseeing docs, what would you recommend for them to kind of, out of your line, say they've got maybe they're doing a little bit of herbs for their hormones or thyroid, maybe they're working on blood sugar balance too, diet, lifestyle wise, where would be like a good entry level for gut brain access, or axis, not access, axis? Where should they start with gut? What would you recommend?
Well, my thing is always, number one, you got to be pooping every day. And it seems like most, especially I'll just speak to the perimenopause woman because we've brought her up a few times, a lot of them are constipated.
Yep.
And that's, if you're not pooping, peeing, and sweating every day, then you're not detoxifying the way you should or could. And so honestly, I would sort of default to the following stack. I would say get our magnesium glycinate. It's stronger and purer than anything else out there. Take 2 to 3 before bed. That's going to make sure your bowels are a little easier to pass on a regular basis. It's going to help you relax. It's helpful for like everything related to aging. I would have somebody on Tributyrin X as well, 1 to 2 before bed, because of the sleep research in mice and rats and the anecdotal evidence from our community of higher deep sleep numbers. And then that's also going to be anti-inflammatory to the entire gut. It's going to help with leaky gut, any mucosal issues that anybody's having. And then I would have them take 2 BeSerene dailies before bed as well. And so that package together is going to be toning the parasympathetic. It's going to be probably giving them like the best sleep that they've experienced in the last like decade. And through that, we're going to be healing the gut, sort of prepping the gut to do its work. And then we can maybe look at, do they need enzymes or something like that later?
Nice. Nice. I like that. Yeah. I mean, sometimes if the gut is not moving, that's like step one. And yes, you are so on it with the menopausal, perimenopausal woman. I mean, I don't know how many women I talk to that are like, I cannot poop no matter what. And they've tried even magnesium before and not had results. They've tried different things, but definitely I have found that quality of magnesium does matter. And I'm sure from sleuthing out what form and your supplier that you kind of went through all of it as well.
Yeah. So I did a deep dive because honestly, I didn't think the world needed another magnesium product, but my community kept asking for it. So I went and I've looked at, as far as I know, every bioavailability paper on magnesium out there. I've read them all. I thought that the type of magnesium really mattered from like a magnesium absorption perspective, like which one's most bioavailable. What I found out is that's actually the reverse. All of the magnesiums, from magnesium oxide through magnesium glycinate, magnesium malate, citrate, all the cool magnesiums, they all are basically absorbed in the body between like 23 and 24%. And so this bioavailability thing is kind of bullshit, in my opinion. It's the wrong focus. It's actually the part that the magnesium is bonded to, that other molecule causes quote unquote side effects or effects elsewhere in the body that ends up, I think, making the certain types of magnesium either more desirable or less desirable. And so like if someone has not been like, if they're not pooping, like only going like once a month, or hopefully they're using enemas at that point, but if they're going like once every 2 weeks, magnesium oxide might be the right magnesium for them, because you need a really powerful like explosion to get going, and something a little softer like magnesium glycinate is not going to do that. But personally, I cannot take magnesium oxide. I will have like extreme diarrhea. It will ruin my day. And most people, if they get 100 or 200 milligrams more oxide than what they need, they will also have that sort of explosion experience, which is most people do not like. Citrate follows closely with oxide, where it's more well tolerated, but if you overdo citrate by like 300, 400 milligrams, you will also be on the toilet all night or all morning with some explosive diarrhea. And that's because the citric acid tends to, just do that to people. And so your range of hitting the right amount every day, it could be hit or miss. And again, so I don't personally love magnesium citrate because I don't like the safety factor, and I don't have 2 hours to waste in the toilet. It's very tiring to do that. So with glycinate, it's bonded to glycine, and glycine is actually a super important amino acid for the gut barrier. It's been studied at 3 grams a day to help with your sleep and help you relax. And so glycine is just this awesome amino acid that many of us are already deficient in. And when you bind that to magnesium, you really don't see any of the side effects. And that's what they saw when they studied Crohn's disease. In this one paper, they compared oxide to glycinate magnesiums, and they found almost the same bioavailability, but they found that way less people had diarrhea. Actually, nobody had diarrhea to the glycinate, whereas like 4 out of 12 had diarrhea for the oxide.
I see. That makes sense.
So I think number one, I think that people companies haven't critically thought about magnesiums and their bonded agents, about how they might be used in clinic. So therefore they make these like, oh, you need all 7 types. Well, no, you don't need the whole kitchen sink. That's not necessarily true from a bioavailability standpoint. If you for some reason think you're low in one of these amino acids or something that's bound to, you could just go take glycine or citric acid or something. But if you're trying to get a certain outcome in clinic or in your life, choosing the right magnesium, I think can really actually take you to that next level where you're like, wow, I actually feel this, whereas I didn't feel other magnesiums. And you can actually read the reviews on our website. That's what that's what the majority of them say. Like, I didn't expect to feel this, but I do. This is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people connect the calm with the calm with magnesium with the branded magnesium citrate powder that we think of in terms of the calm brand. And I don't think a lot of people suspect that glycinate forms would actually give that relaxation other than the muscles, because it's been touted so much for just muscle, muscle, muscle.
Yeah, I mean it's a great example of marketing.
Oh, yes. And then there's marketing.
And hey, maybe I'm wrong, but that's why we have a 60-day money back guarantee. I don't think they have that. So test them. If you love natural calm, great. I used it back in the day until it didn't agree with me anymore. And I saw that in clinic it didn't agree with like too many people that I put it on. So
Yeah.
that's why we have our money back guarantee, because I mean, I don't know if this product's gonna work for you, and I don't think you will either until you try it. But I'd rather that you try it, and you're like, oh man, that didn't work. I'll take my money back, versus listen to something like this and be like, well, I'll take the diarrhea once out of every 7 days. I'll just stay here. I know this. I know this pain. I'm not going to try that other pain.
No. I mean, I know some people, yeah, that might be where they're at, but the stuff that I've seen with my patients in magnesium citrate, like, yes, it works. Yes, if you want a colon blow and you got time to sit on the toilet, then I mean, I've recommended it for certain folks because nothing else was officially working. But for a chronic use of it, I wouldn't want to do that, because I gotta believe that it also is ripping up the gut a little bit too, just from how hard it is on the gut.
Yeah, I do think it's got to be either forcing muscle contractions or pulling a little too much water into the gut on a regular basis in order to cause that explosion like effect. And I don't think that's ideal long term. If you got to get out of a bind, literally, no judgment there. Getting everything going again, that's not a big deal. But it's that long term chronic usage for months and months and years that I think we should be right to question that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I would absolutely agree. So while we're on the subject of constipation, because let's face it is quite a common thing, and um it's it's like probably every other patient I talk to has this situation kind of going on. Have you noted along the way any connection with the constipation and bile flow, and thought about anything in that department? Because I know you love to do research and look into things. Have you thought about any ways any of your products could help with bile flow, kind of like maybe the HCL guard or something of that nature, for folks that may be thinking that their issue is a bile flow issue?
Yeah. I mean, bile is extremely important, and it can be the root cause of some people's gut dysfunctions, either not having enough or not making enough, not flowing enough. My understanding is that one of the biggest triggers of that bile release, as well as consistent bile production, is going to be the pH coming out of your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, part of my sort of constipation stack for people is always to try HCL guard and rule out low stomach acid, because if you can support stomach acid and then you get better bile flow, you get better pancreatic enzyme release and activation, maybe you need less products long term. Otherwise, some people will end up being on, things like TUDCA or beetroot or other sort of bile enhancers or stimulators for a while. And I think that's totally fine as well. It's just, I think it's always best to try to knock it down in order of operations such that you don't end up with a cabinet full of pills that, could be eliminated by trying something else first.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Going back to what's the first step um in the system. I mean, minus saliva production, and that's a whole nother conversation. But working with the stomach for sure is a good place. And I think for a lot of women who are over 35, we do start to have less stomach acid, either because of stress or because of just straight up age and lifestyle stuff that kind of causes us to have less stomach acid made. And so thanks for
It's
mentioning that.
Yeah, it's really common. Even Suzanne Summers' latest book, she mentions low stomach acid and using products like HCl Guard to help restore your stomach acid for aging, especially if you want to have like amazing hair, skin, and nails. And part of the reason is because you need proper stomach acid to release the amino acids from the protein you eat, and then you need to absorb those amino acids and repair your cells and live, keep your muscle healthy. But the extras then become our hair, skin, and nails. And so whether this is a constipation thing or maybe it's a vanity driven thing, I know that's always the in with my wife. I can't really like get her motivated by gut stuff, but if I explain to her how it's tied into her vanity, she'll listen.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes. For us ladies, we sometimes need that background as something to keep us going in that department. Oh my goodness. Well,
But to your point, I mean, do you use taurine? Do you use TUDCA? Do you use beetroot or anything like that for bile?
I do. I do. I typically am going to start with stomach acid first though. And then my usual go-to has been TUDCA, but I've had quite a few people really have some negative side effects with it. So I kind of did switch to taurine with a little bit of vitamin A and D to
Oh,
um
cool.
to try to help it and see if that's a factor too. Those are kind of my go-tos, but yeah, I always start with HCl first. But yeah, I've been seeing more people lately, and I don't know what's happening, but a lot more reactions to TUDCA than I had in the past. So I don't know what that is. I got to figure that one out.
All right, to be determined.
Yes. Yes, that one is a weird one. Just some stomach pain with that sucker. So, and not even stomach pain. It would be pain like kind of in the gallbladder area. So it's like, maybe it's pushing it too hard. Maybe there's sludge. Maybe there's something. But yeah, I think maybe I need to be more on different angles there. I've even thought about choline and going, do I need to maybe try something there? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
I mean, I hadn't thought about trying to push the choline pathway. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, I'm still learning about TUDCA, and it's gallbladder's never really been my issue. But some people on my team, some of my health coaches love it, and so yeah, I'm still kind of diving into it. That's why we don't have a product around it yet. Is I don't really see yet the right mixture of things that could move that category forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I honestly lately, now that I do pretty consistently the hydrochloric, I've rarely do go towards bile flow stimulators unless someone's got something pretty serious going on, because the HCl does seem to take care of it, to be honest. I mean, I don't tend to see as much stuff. And then I had the whole thing where the people that weren't moving still with the pain with the TUDCA. So yeah, I don't know. It's a interesting, working with the gut is so interesting. And sometimes I love it and sometimes I hate it.
Totally.
Well, I know you know from the ups and downs of working in a clinic setting how the digestive system is, you can develop a love-hate relationship with treating it.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you kind of get something figured out and it works for, 20 people in a row, then you run into like two or three people who it doesn't work for. And then that's the frustrating thing, I think, is that there's an infinite number of variables, as we've talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
You can take the entire healthy gut product lineup and make sure your stomach acid is great, your enzymes are supported, your butyrate supported, your magnesium levels are supported. But like, if you're in a crazy moldy house, or if you're in a abusive work environment, or I don't know, you have 5 kids at home and no support network around those kids, I mean, your gut's probably going to stay wrecked until you deal with those other factors. And I think that's part of healing guts, and part of the trouble with it is there's just so many possibilities.
I'm glad you brought up those. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the external environment is so important in this realm with the gut, and always taking into account that I always tell folks, their gut's really their first brain. So whatever processing of anything, it's got to process through the gut, even though we wouldn't think it, based on what we would normally suspect our brain thinks everything. But boy, I think the gut has a lot more to do with thought process than the brain sometimes.
Oh yeah, I think we intuitively, I think we all know that. The research is now just starting to pour out, showing that you can affect the brain through the gut and vice versa. You could do neurofeedback, you can do tapping, you can do red light therapy in your brain and affect the gut, just like you can take various substances in the gut, or you can, butyrate in the gut, and you can affect the brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh man, so many things, so many things. Well, we don't want to confuse people and give them too much to think about in this podcast, because we just want to keep it focused here. So, Steven, I could talk to you for hours, that. Ah man, we geeked out major today on quite a few different things. If you want to start simple, I know we dove into a whole bunch of different things today, but one step at a time, one step at a time.
Yeah. And I think if you take some Be Serene daily, again, give it a shot, 30, 60 days, we'll give you your money back if it doesn't work. But I think you'll notice pretty quickly that it's going to give you a little bit of an edge there to just be more able to deal with life and have less of it.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking too. Steven, thanks for coming back on, sharing your knowledge as always. And I'm really excited to share the Be Serene products with my community. And I'm really glad that you took on this company.
Thanks, Jannine.
Health junkies, are you feeling just off? Feeling like you're aging a little bit faster than you want to, and wondering what in the world is up? Hey, I might have some answers for you and some direction. If you want to chat with me, I am offering complimentary calls right now. You can head over to Dr. spelled out JKRAUSEND.com. Take my quiz, click on the schedule a chat, and let's talk and see if we can get you in the right direction. And if I'm able to help you, I'm going to let you know. Otherwise, I'm going to help you find what you're looking for. Head over to drjkrausend.com and check it out now. Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.